Today, I'm going to be showing you how you can make a tournament-winning deck list from this single €20 product. Hey everyone, my name's Taylor and welcome back to Cardmarket Yu-Gi-Oh! Today we have something very exciting, being the Legendary Modern Decks 2026. This had a slight delay in Europe, but has finally released and has been getting pretty rave reviews across the board. Although this does come with 3 separate decks inside that are ready to play, the best strategy if you want to competitively succeed is actually to combine the cards from those 3 decks into one all-powerful meta threat. And what does the whole deck look like? Give me a minute and I'll show you. We're all sleeved up and ready to go. This is everything you need for your Sky Striker Mitsurugi deck. And now it's time we go through card by card and talk about what the actual game plan for all of these cards being put together is. There's only 2 effect monsters in the main deck for this strategy, and the first is Sky Striker Ace Ray. This card is able to link itself off as a quick effect, which is nice to be able to do on your opponent's turn or otherwise dodge some things that are trying to target her. It also has a graveyard effect that will revive itself if your opponent ever tries to remove the card that's in your extra monster zone using one of their effects, which is really nice and great at setting up future plays, especially since it can quick effect to link summon into something else. Then we have 1 copy of Sky Striker Ace Rose, which may not be as useful as Ray, but is still a great card to have, especially when you can summon it from the deck. More on that later. If you normal or special summon a Sky Striker, Rose will summon herself from your hand. Then from the graveyard, if you remove your opponent's monster from the extra monster zone, she'll revive herself and also negate 1 monster effect on the field for the rest of the turn. It's always important to remember if you have a Rose in your graveyard that's ready to activate and bring itself back for a negate. It's just an extra piece of interaction that you really don't want to miss out on if you have it available to you anyway. Next we have 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army, which technically isn't a Sky Striker card, but the reason it's here is because Ray and Rose are both level 4 warriors, so they can both be searched with this card. Although most of the time you will be going for the Ray and not the Rose, since you have other ways to access Rose later. Then we have one of the most important cards for the entire Sky Striker engine, being Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. This card says if you have no monsters in your main monster zones, you can add any Sky Striker card from your deck to your hand. And then if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can draw 1 card. Obviously a very good effect, being able to search literally any Sky Striker card you could want for the given situation, and if you're already set up, you even get an extra card on top of that. This is a very important card for Sky Striker, and as you will see, a lot of our plays are going to revolve around using it as much as possible to get tons and tons of value. Then we have Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones, which if you have no cards in your main monster zones, you can special summon a Sky Striker token. If you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, the attack and defense of the token will be 1500, but otherwise it'll be 0. I'm going to be honest though, that usually doesn't come up. Really what you're using this token for is to make one of the various Link 1 monsters available in the Sky Striker strategy, usually a Kagari, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Here we have 2 copies of Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor. This is a quick play spell that allows you to negate the effects of an opponent's monster, and if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can actually take control of it until the end phase. This is a great piece of interruption that actually gives you the negation whether you have the spells in your graveyard or not. So yes, taking control of a monster is a great bonus, but even without the spells, you can still use this card pretty effectively in most cases. Then we have 3 copies of Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage. This card also needs no monsters in your main monster zones, but when you activate it, you can send a card you control to the graveyard to lock yourself into only Sky Striker Ace monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, and special summoning one of those Sky Striker Ace monsters essentially for free without using any monsters as material. Then if you also have 1 light and 1 dark Sky Striker Ace monster between your field and graveyard, the card you summon also gains 1000 attack. It's hard to see the potential of a card like this without knowing what Link monsters you're going to be summoning with it. For now, just think of it as an instant fusion for Sky Striker Ace Zero specifically. Finally, we have Sky Striker Special Maneuver Lemniscate, and boy is this card a doozy. You can shuffle back an equal number of Sky Striker spells and monsters from your graveyard in order to return to hand cards on the field for every 3 cards you shuffled back. That means if you shuffle back 3 spells and 3 monsters, you can bounce 2 cards on the field back to the hand, which is obviously very good. It also has a graveyard effect that if the Sky Striker monster is special summoned to your field while it's there, you can banish it in order to link summon a Sky Striker using the cards you control. So similar to Ray, link summoning with a quick effect is quite good. Lemnis Gate is a hugely important tool for the deck. Most of what we're doing involves us trying to get monsters and spells into our graveyard anyway, so being able to top it all off with a Lemnis Gate to non-target return to hand, maybe 2 things on the field if we do it right, is crazy good. And now we might as well talk about all these Sky Striker Link monsters which I've been alluding to this entire time. Sky Striker Ace Kagari is a Link 1 that when it's summoned, you can return 1 spell card from your graveyard to your hand. Then while it's on the field, it gains 100 attack for every spell in your graveyard. You can see how this card can be so useful in this archetype when you think about the cards like Engage and Hornet Drones, which give you advantage all on their own, so being able to recycle them over and over again with Kagari is a great tool to have. Then we have 3 other Sky Striker Link ones, which are a bit less useful, but still good in their own right. We have Shizuku, which reduces your opponent's monsters by 100 for every spell in your graveyard, and also, when it's special summoned during the end phase, you can add a Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand, as long as that card isn't already in your graveyard. Because a lot of the Sky Striker spells are quick plays, that means you can actually extend your combos during your end phase after this effect resolves. We have Hayate, which can attack directly and then after damage calculation, send a Sky Striker card from your deck to your graveyard. Lastly, we have Amatsu. Amatsu says when your opponent activates the effect of a monster with 2000 or more attack, you can quick effect to change that effect to destroy a Sky Striker Ace Link monster that you control. A super useful effect that you should not underestimate. Moving on to the Link 2s, first up, we have Sky Striker Ace Zeke. This is another great piece of interruption during your opponent's turn, because when it's summoned, it can banish 1 card on the field until your opponent's next end phase. And during your turn, you can send a card you control to the graveyard to give it a 1000 attack point boost until the end of the turn. Another great card to keep in mind using Lemnis Gate's graveyard effect to link summon during your opponent's turn. Then there's Azalea. It has a similar effect that when it's summoned, it can destroy 1 card on the field. But if you have 3 or less spells in your graveyard, it will destroy itself as well. Also, if you battle with it, you can banish a spell from your graveyard to destroy the opponent's battling monster. Not the most versatile card, but it definitely can come up sometimes. With Combined Maneuver Engage 0, if it's special summoned, you can negate the effect of a monster with 2500 or more attack until the end of the turn. Then, if this card attacks at the start of the damage step while you have Ray and Rose in your graveyard, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls. A great comeback card when you feel like you're out of other options and you just want to go for the big flashy play. And as a final piece to the puzzle, we have Sky Striker Ace 0. When this card is summoned, you can add any Sky Striker spell from your graveyard or deck to your hand. Also, as a quick effect, you can tribute it to special summon a Rose and Ray from your graveyard or deck and destroy 1 card on the field. Both of these effects are great, and using 0 properly is going to be essential in creating a winning strategy. Then we have the giant Link 4 Surgical Striker Spectra. This card needs you to have at least 1 spell in your graveyard or else it will lose all of its attack. Then when your opponent activates an effect as Chainlink 2 or higher, you can banish 2 spells from your hand or graveyard to negate the effect and destroy 1 card they control. A hugely problematic boss monster that if you're set up with a ton of spells, can cause real trouble for your opponent. And that about sums up our Sky Striker engine, and we can move on to talking about Mitsurugi. But what better way to introduce Mitsurugi than by telling us how it gets us to our Sky Striker engine. Sky Striker Ace Camellia is just that card. It requires any 2 effect monsters, and if you have 3 or less spells in your graveyard, you can send a Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard. It also has the effect that when it's sent to the graveyard, you can target a monster your opponent controls, special summon this card to their field, and then send the targeted monster to the graveyard. The second effect is meant to enable your Rose activations by destroying this on their field, but if you don't do that, you also get this back at the end of the turn. What we're really interested in is the first effect, because sending any Sky Striker spell we want to the graveyard basically opens us up to be able to make Kagari and get that card to our hand. So since Mitsurugi is so consistent, all we have to do is use it to end with 2 bodies on the board, make a Camellia, send an Engage to the graveyard, make Kagari, and then add that Engage to our hand, and we have our full Sky Striker engine online. Let's see how the Mitsurugi cards are able to do that for us. First up, we obviously need to talk about Habakiri. The poster boy of the archetype, this is a ritual monster that you can reveal in your hand to special summon a Mitsurugi monster from your deck and then tribute one monster you control. This effect is so strong, you can only use it once per duel. And thankfully, all the Mitsurugi cards have effects for when they're tributed. Habakiri himself, for example, lets you add one Mitsurugi card from your deck to your hand when he's tributed, and then he can special summon himself from the graveyard as well. Habakiri just kind of does everything you want your deck to do in one card. So it's definitely important for us to be able to find our way to a Habakiri as quickly as possible. We also have Mitsurugi Murakumo, another big ritual reptile monster, but this time, sadly, it doesn't come with a really good reveal in hand to special summon from deck effect. It does have something to make up for it though. When it's special summoned, it destroys all monsters on your opponent's side of the field. And when they activate a card or effect, you can quick effect to make them have to discard a card at resolution in order for that effect to not be negated. And when it's tributed, it also lets you add a Mitsurugi card from your deck to your hand and special summons itself from the graveyard. A one-sided board wipe and a once per turn hand rip is obviously really good. Add back in the fact it'll special summon itself when you tribute it, and you have a really great card on your hands. We also have Mitsurugi Futsu as the third ritual monster in the deck. While this card's on the field, if your opponent special summons a monster, you can target a reptile in your graveyard and special summon it. And once again, if it's tributed, it will add a Mitsurugi card from your deck to your hand and then special summon itself. A very useful card to have on your board if you feel like you need a couple layered interactions to help stop your opponent from breaking through whatever you've done on your turn. Next, we can talk about the two main cards you're going to be tributing after you summon them from the deck with Habakiri's effect. Most of the time, that will be Saji. When Saji is normal, special summoned, or tributed, you can add one Mitsurugi spell or trap from your deck to your hand. We also have Aramasa, which has the same effect as Saji, but adds you a monster instead of a spell or trap. Sadly, that usually isn't as useful as getting Mitsurugi prayers, but it's a good backup plan to have either way. And speaking of Mitsurugi prayers, this is the card that really makes the deck tick. Prayers has two effects, and you can only use each of these effects once per turn. But if you tribute a reptile monster when you activate it, you can choose to resolve both of them in order. The effects are to add a Mitsurugi monster from your deck to your hand, or take 800 damage and then special summon a Mitsurugi monster from your hand or graveyard. Being a quick play spell and being able to special summon your Mitsurugis from the graveyard during your opponent's turn to get their interruption effects is what really makes this card stand out. Remember that Murakumo is a Regeki as soon as it hits the board, so obviously that's a pretty powerful effect to summon on their turn. Then we have our single copy of Mitsurugi Ritual. It once again has two effects, each of which you can only use once per turn. You can either ritual summon a ritual monster from your deck by using cards from your hand and field as material, or ritual summon a monster from your hand by using material from your hand, field, or deck. Usually you'll want to be summoning a card from your hand by using material from your deck, since that's the least interaction for your opponent to be able to interrupt. This is a great card to get all your Mitsurugi rituals in accessible places and part of your rotation. And as a reminder, ritual monsters need to be properly summoned before they're able to special summon themselves from the graveyard. So they'll only be able to revive themselves back with their own tributing effects after they've been summoned with Mitsurugi Ritual. Or alternatively, we also have Mitsurugi Mirror. This is another ritual spell, but this time you can summon a ritual monster from your hand or graveyard, which is mainly what you want to use it for. Also, if you tribute one of the Mitsurugi rituals while this card's in your graveyard, you can shuffle it back into the deck. Having both of these cards means we'll have a very easy way to summon two of our ritual monsters properly, and once we do that, we'll be able to revive them back and get their effects off over and over again every single turn. And lastly, we have one single trap card, being Mitsurugi Great Purification. And while it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to special summon one of your ritual monsters back, and then tribute one other card you control. Another great piece of interruption, as well as an extra extender once it does come back to your turn. And last but certainly not least, we have Pre-Preparation of Rites. Although it's not a Mitsurugi card itself, it's almost always used to get us a copy of Habakiri, as well as Mitsurugi Mirror. Sadly, it can't actually add Mitsurugi Ritual to our hand because it needs to have the monster's name on the ritual spell itself, which Mitsurugi Mirror actually does. And all of this will perfectly come together with our Sky Striker cards to create a board that has many pieces of interaction and lots of ways to stop our opponent from tearing our board apart, as well as ways to push through their board if we end up going second. We have a couple extra cards that we've thrown into here as non-engine pieces, so we can talk about those really quickly as well. First up, we have 3 Upstart Goblins. It's just always nice to be able to get extra spells into the graveyard to turn on our Sky Striker effects, and what better way to do that than by just simply replacing itself and giving our opponent a little bit of life, which we don't really mind too much about that. We also have 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This card is great in Sky Striker. You can send any number of cards from your hand or field to the graveyard to negate that many cards your opponent controls. And whatever types of cards you send to activate this card, they can't respond with those types of cards to this effect. The great thing is, if you play a spell, you can chain Forbidden Droplet and send that spell to the graveyard as it's resolving, essentially letting you play this card for free. A super useful tool for a deck like this. Then we have 2 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust, as well as 1 copy of Triple Tactics Talent. Thrust can be used when our opponent activates a monster effect during our turn. You can set 1 normal spell or trap from your deck except itself, or if your opponent controls a monster, you can add that card to your hand instead. If you do set the card to your field though, you can't activate it during the same turn. But you'd be especially happy if you're able to get a Triple Tactics Talent to your hand. It has the same activation requirement of your opponent using a monster effect during this turn, but then you get to choose one of its 3 effects. Drawing 2 cards, taking control of a monster your opponent controls until the end phase, or looking at your opponent's hand and choosing 1 card to shuffle into the deck. There's no guarantee to be going first for the first game of a match, so if we are going second, it's nice to have tools like these available to us. And for our last spell, we have 1 copy of Called by the Grave. This lets us banish a monster from our opponent's graveyard and negate the effects of that card, as well as cards with that card's name until the end of next turn. Usually used for stopping an opponent's hand trap, and when we're drawing as many cards as we're planning to, our chances of seeing this one of is actually quite high. We also have 1 copy of Infinite Impermanence. This is a monster negate on the field that we can play from our hand as long as we control no cards. All around a nice card to have if we want to try to force our opponent to not go full combo. To round off our extra deck, we have 1 copy of IP Masquerena. This lets you link summon on your opponent's turn as a quick effect, and the card you summon using IP Masquerena can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And usually what you'll be summoning is an SP Little Knight. When she's summoned, she can target 1 card on the field or in either graveyard and banish it. Then, when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can quick effect to target 2 monsters on the field, including a monster you control, and banish both of them until the end phase. More interruption during our opponent's turn if you aren't seeing the pattern yet. We also have 1 copy of Evil Swarm Exciton Knight, which is a great panic button to be able to summon if you have no other way to deal with your opponent's board. During your main phase or your opponent's battle phase, if your opponent has more cards in their hand and on their field than you do, you can quick effect to detach a material and destroy every other card on the field. But if you do, your opponent takes no damage for the rest of the turn. And also as a backup plan, we have 1 copy of number 41, Baguska the Terribly Tired Tapir. One of the best artworks in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! While in attack position, your opponent can't target or destroy this card. And while in defense position, it changes all other monsters to defense position and negates the effects of cards that were activated while in defense position. If your plays somehow get stopped and you're left with a Ray and Rose and not much else to do, sometimes a Baguska in defense position is the best way to ensure that you live until next turn. And with that, our deck is complete. But how does it play? Well, that's a great question. Let's check it out in our very beginner-friendly combo guide. So here we are at the duel field and we're ready to play with our brand new deck. I just want to give a small reminder, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very complicated game. These cards do a lot of different things, but hopefully the overview I just gave you of every single card we've included is enough for you to be able to follow along what's happening in this demonstration. Also, there's very few games of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where your opponent isn't going to interact with you at all and just let you do exactly what you want to do. It would be pretty tough for me to go through every single possible combination of cards your opponent uses against you versus what you have in your hand. There's a lot of options to this game. So instead, I thought maybe I'll show you the optimal build you're working towards, what endboard you want to end up with at the end of your turn, and then no matter what the situation is, that's what you're building towards. Even if you can't quite get all the way there, this is your ideal, perfect situation. So instead of just jumping straight into the combo, I thought maybe we'll show you what the end board looks like, and then you know what we're working towards and can follow along a little bit easier. As you can see here, we have Sky Striker Ace 0 on our field. She's ready to use her effect on our opponent's turn to summon a Ray and a Rose from our deck, as well as non-targeted destroy one card our opponent controls. That's pretty great. We also have a set Lemnis Gate. This is the card that we shuffle back cards from our graveyard that are Sky Strikers in equal amounts, spells and monsters, and then we return to hand as many cards on the field as we want by 3. So if we do 3 cards, really it'll be 4 because it's the same amount of monsters and spells. We can bounce 1 card, or if we do 6, we can bounce 2 cards. Right now, we have 3 Sky Striker spells in our graveyard, as well as 2 Sky Striker monsters. So once Ace 0 uses her effect and tributes herself, we'll be able to return these 6 cards to the deck and bounce 2 cards our opponent controls back to hand, which is a very good effect. We also have a set Mitsurugi Prayers. This will special summon our Murakumo from the graveyard, which, if you remember, will destroy all the monsters our opponent controls, as well as has the quick effect. We can decide when they activate a card or effect, we can make them have to discard a card at resolution in order for that effect to go through. That's a very good effect, and we're very much looking forward to that. We also have set a copy of Mitsurugi Great Purification. This will let us tribute one of our level 5 or higher reptile monsters to negate and destroy an opponent's card. Also, another level of interruption, and very, very good to negate whatever they're trying to do. Last but not least, we have 6 additional cards still in our hand. These are meant as placeholders. These can be literally anything. It's just part of what we've done so far, that you will end up with 6 more cards in your hand. Despite all of this that we already have going on, this can be used to insulate your board or make it stronger or stop your opponent from interacting with you as much. Different starters lead to different combos. It's all very complicated, but at least know this isn't as fragile as it may look. When we're doing the combo with only one combo starter, there's many different ways to end up in this position. So let's have a look at what it looks like when we use Ace 0 on our opponent's turn. Say they play a card and we want to destroy it. This will go to the graveyard and we will summon out our copy of Rose and Ray. Just like that, we are now set up for our Lemnis Gate. It doesn't really matter when we summon the Mitsurugis. That's the part that's going to depend on what your opponent is playing and what their combo looks like. But let's just say we activate Prayers and we take our 800 damage to blow up their field at some point after we use Zero's effect. So now we have a negate ready to go with Great Purification, as well as forcing a discard, and we just blew up their field. So let's pretend they activate something else. We'll use Great Purification, and that will tribute our Murakumo, which will then add a Mitsurugi spell to our hand, probably going to be another copy of Prayers. And also we have our copy of Mitsurugi Mirror in the graveyard at the moment, which when Habakiri, Murakumo, or Futsu is tributed while it's in the graveyard, it can shuffle itself back into the deck. So we're gonna do that as well. Now let's say our opponent keeps playing, they're doing more and more stuff. Now's the time we can use our Lemnis Gate. So we will actually have our 3 Sky Striker spells, as well as our 3 Sky Striker monsters here, that we will shuffle back into our extra deck and into our deck respectively, to return 2 cards on the field back to the hand. And if our opponent still keeps going, we can keep going too. Remember that Ray has a quick effect to tag herself out into one of the Sky Striker Link monsters, so we'll go ahead and do that now into something like a Kagari. Sadly, we're not going to be adding a spell back in this example because we don't have any spells left in our graveyard. But as you can imagine, with these 6 extra cards in our hand, maybe that could be something that happened. Either way, we can activate the graveyard effect of Lemnis Gate, which because we special summoned a monster to our extra monster zone, we can banish it to then link summon using the cards we control. So we will use the Kagari and the Rose to go into something like maybe the Sky Striker Ace Zeke. When Zeke comes out, it can banish a card on the field until your opponent's next turn. So you can see how many levels of interruption we've just used. We summoned Murakumo and blew up the field. We made them discard a card in order to activate an effect. We negated one of their card effects with Great Purification. We destroyed one of their cards with 0. We also shuffled back to the hand 2 cards with Lemnis Gate, and now we've also banished a card with Zeke. It's pretty hard to imagine they're able to play through all of that, and that's why this deck can be so strong. But I'm sure at this point you understand and want to know how we ended up getting here. So let's reset the field and I'll take you through the very basic combo line for Mitsurugi Sky Striker. So here we go. We have an example opening hand. We're going to have 4 random cards, which we're not going to interact with, and I'm just going to use pre-preparation of rights to get the combo going. Basically, to use the Mitsurugi engine, you need some sort of access to the Habakiri, whether that is pre-prep, whether that's Habakiri himself, whether that's prayers. Doesn't really matter all that much, but pre-prep obviously is a really good way to do it since it gives you 2 cards instead of just 1. So this is the example I'll be using here. We're going to activate pre-preparation of rights, which will add the ritual monster Habakiri to our hand, as well as a ritual spell that mentions it, meaning it has to be the Mitsurugi Mirror and not Mitsurugi Ritual. Now that we have Habakiri in our hand, we can use its in-hand effect, revealing itself, and we special summon a Mitsurugi from the deck and then tribute a monster we control. That is going to end up being our Mitsurugi Saji. So Saji will come out to the field, he will then tribute, and Habakiri will stop revealing itself. That is our once per duel effect, and we do not get to do that anymore. It is very strong, as you're about to see. Saji has an effect that when he's tributed, we can add a Mitsurugi spell from our deck to our hand. So in this case, we are going to get access to the Mitsurugi Ritual. Now that we have Mitsurugi Ritual in our hand, we can activate it to special summon our Habakiri from hand while tributing material from the deck. So in this case, we need access to our Murakumo, and this is a great way to get it out of the deck and into the graveyard. So we will send Murakumo by tributing it into our graveyard and special summon our Habakiri. Thankfully, as you know by now, all the Mitsurugis have effects when they're tributed, so Murakumo will let us add another Mitsurugi card from our deck to our hand. In this case, it's going to be Mitsurugi Prayers. Now we're clear to go ahead and activate the Mitsurugi Mirror, which we added earlier. This lets us ritual summon from the graveyard using material from our hand or field, so we can tribute our Habakiri in order to special summon our Murakumo. At this point, if your opponent has any monsters, they would be destroyed by Murakumo's effect, as well as we get to activate our Habakiri effect. When it's tributed, it will add another Mitsurugi card from our deck to our hand and special summon itself back to the field since it was already properly ritual summoned with Mitsurugi Ritual. So we will add Mitsurugi Great Purification to our hand and we will resummon our Habakiri. So now we're in a great spot. We have prayers and purification to set to our field, as well as both of our Mitsurugis, which have been properly ritual summoned, so they will continually be able to revive themselves once per turn. Murakumo will blow up our opponent's board when we resummon it, and also force them to discard a card to activate their effects, as we saw in the example. Now, we need to get into our Sky Striker cards. So thankfully, we can tribute. I'm saying tribute because it's Mitsurugi stuff. This is not a tribute. We're gonna link summon into Sky Striker Ace Camellia because she just needs 2 effect monsters. And because we have 3 or less spells in our graveyard, being the pre-prep, the ritual, and the mirror, we can send a Sky Striker card from our deck to our graveyard. In this case, we're going to want it to be Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. The linchpin best card in all of Sky Striker, who would have guessed? Because now we can link summon again using our Camellia into the amazing Link 1 Sky Striker Ace Kagari. Kagari, when she's summoned, is going to add a Sky Striker spell from our graveyard back to our hand, which conveniently will be our Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. Now, by activating Engage, we get a Sky Striker card from our deck to our hand, which we're going to pull out Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage. And also, because we have the 3 spells in our graveyard, like we just talked about, Engage also will draw us an extra card. So we will add this extra card to our pile of mysterious anything, which is now 5. All of these cards can be used at any point to help keep you playing. Very, very good to get extra card advantage through just doing this combo. So now we're going to activate Linkage, getting rid of our Kagari to special summon a different Link monster from our extra deck. So this is going to be where we get Sky Striker Ace 0. And thanks to Ace 0's effect, when she's summoned, we get to add a Sky Striker spell from our deck to our hand. I bet you can guess what it'll be. It's Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. Activating Engage, we get a chance to look for another spell. This time it's going to be the Sky Striker Special Maneuver Lemnis Gate. And once again, because we have so many spells, we will draw an extra card. That's the 6 cards in our hand that will be helping us through our turn on top of everything else we're doing. And by setting the Lemnis Gate, we now are fully set up with our end board. Not too bad if I do say so myself, but maybe it's worth going over one more combo line just in case your hand doesn't have access to the Mitsurugi engine. So let's reset and go through one more combo. In this example, we'll do the same thing. We'll say these are 4 random cards and 1 Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. Now this could be Engage, it could be Array, it could be a Hornet Drones. Any of these cards could be Reinforcement of the Army, Upstart Goblin. There's lots of ways to get this deck going, but once again, this is just an example. So if you start with just an Engage, you're able to look for Sky Striker card, but you aren't able to draw that extra card. It does feel a little bit bad, but it's still good enough for us to make a play. So we're going to go ahead and find ourselves. Where did you go? There's only 1 copy, so it's tough to find. The Hornet Drones. Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones, we're going to activate to special summon ourselves a Sky Striker token, which we have right here. Then, the token only has 0 attack and 0 defense. We don't really care about that anyway, because we're just going to use it to link summon with and make ourselves, you guessed it, a Kagari. Kagari allows us to get back our Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, which we will then replay. Now we're adding ourselves a copy of Sky Striker Mobilize Linkage to our hand. And from here, it's a pretty similar setup. We do actually want at least 1 extra body in the graveyard for Lemnis Gate if possible, since we don't have the Camellia summon from the bridge from the Mitsurugi engine. So, because we can only summon Kagari once per turn, we're just going to go ahead and link 1 into a copy of Hayate before we activate Linkage, just for the extra body. Now, when we use Linkage, we'll get rid of the Hayate and special summon ourselves the one and only Sky Striker Ace 0. Now, 0's effect will activate. We will add a card from our deck to our hand, which will be another copy of Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. But this time, as you can see, we have 3 spells in our graveyard. So we will activate the Engage. We will go ahead and search for our copy of Lemnis Gate, and then we will draw our 1 extra card. Please make sure you shuffle between your searches and your draw when you're using Engage in a real game. So now here we are. We can set our Lemnis Gate, and although this doesn't look like much, it's not nearly as strong as being backed up by the Mitsurugi cards as well. You do still have the 5 cards in your hand to help you out. And we have the same sort of setup with Ace Zero and Lemniscate. So our opponent's turn starts, we decide they have a card we want to destroy, so we activate Zero. Zero is going to summon from our deck our copy of Ray, as well as Rose. And then our graveyard is perfectly set up. To activate our Lemniscate, we would shuffle back our 3 Sky Striker Link monsters, as well as a Linkage, Engage, and Hornet drones. And that would return to hand 2 cards on the field. After we do that, we still have the Ray effect, which will tribute itself so it can link summon into a copy of Kagari. This time, we can actually activate Kagari's effect to return Engage to our hand, as well as the effect of Lemniscate, banishing itself to link summon. So we can go into a Link 2, which will probably be the Zeke. Right here, like this. You get to banish a monster your opponent controls until the end of the next turn. Hopefully that's more than enough to keep you alive and then swing in for game on your next turn. Hopefully this gives you a basic overview of how you want to be trying to play the deck. Don't be afraid to read your cards, learn them inside and out. It's okay to make mistakes, but something specifically to watch for is cards that have restrictions. There's Sky Striker Ace monsters that can only be link summoned, meaning you can't actually summon them with Ray's effect. That's very important to keep in mind. There's also some restrictions on the Mitsurugi cards, saying you can't attack directly if you use them. So these are all things that you need to really try to keep in mind as you're going through these combo lines, and try to stop yourself from accidentally cheating by not applying these restrictions. It happens, it's fine, it's a learning experience, but it's just something to keep in mind as you play more and more Yu-Gi-Oh! And hey, if you haven't picked up your copy of Legendary Modern Decks 2026, you know where to do it, cardmarket.com, where you can buy and sell all your trading cards, Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, Pokemon cards, Magic cards. We love all games here, doesn't matter to me. And of course, while you're there, check your account, turn on your 2-factor authentication, because we want to keep you, your cards, and your Cardmarket credit safe. That's the best way to do it. Turn that 2-factor authentication on. And if you have any questions about this deck or these cards, leave them in the comments below. I will try to answer some of them, and I'm sure the community would love to answer them too. We love to see new players getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you like the content, like, comment, subscribe to Cardmarket Yu-Gi-Oh! For more videos just like this one. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! And we'll see you at locals. Snake, it's a snake. Oh, it's a snake. Striker, 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 engage, engage.